Gene Meyer. I live outside of town here, about 5 miles. I live the same place that I lived when I went to school at Lafayette School. I had the same teacher for 6.5 years, and then she retired during the middle of the year, and her name was Ethel Cernahouse. She was my teacher, and I was so fortunate to have her because she would drive by our house every day on the way to school, and she always had a brand new car because that was what they were doing. They were selling Chevrolets, and I was so fortunate I could get a free ride to school every day. The catch was I had to help her when I got there because we didn't have running water in the school, and so I would get there early before school started, and so we would carry water, and I should say I would carry water, and I would also carry wood in that we could heat the schoolhouse with. We had a big round oak furnace sitting in the front of the school, and if you were fortunate enough to have a seat, your desk, if it was close to that furnace or that stove, you would get nice and warm. In fact, you'd probably get really hot. And the rest of them, sitting back a ways, were probably really pretty cold. But that's just the way it was. That was the system that we had for heating, and we didn't have inside bathrooms like you have today. We had the outside toilets, and one for the boys and one for the girls, and it was mighty cold in the winter time, but that's the way it was. Now the distance I had to go to school was 6.5 miles, and it didn't really make it bad when I was riding to school with her, but when she left, then I had to walk that distance. And so in the wintertime, rather than walk, I skied to school. I used to go across country, and it cut the distance down quite a bit because normally I had to go, it was like a right angle, and so it was a lot further if you went by the road. But I'd cut across the farmers' fields, and I was really good at skiing, and we didn't have the cross-country skis like you have today. We had just, they were really wide, and you used them for everything. They had no ski shoes. You couldn't keep them on very good unless you cut off. We used to make rubber binders, and I'm going to call them that. I don't know what they really were. We used to take inner tubes, and we'd cut them crossways and cut them about 1 inch wide, and then we would put them over our ankles, and then as we stepped into the ski, we would pull the one end down over our toes, and that would hold our foot into the strap pretty good. So we could really go pretty fast across the field. So that worked really good in the wintertime. Summertime, of course, you couldn't go across the field, or in the spring and fall, because the farmers had crops there, so you had to go around the road then. And I remember sometimes that the roads were so bad with snow, they didn't have the equipment to plow them like they do now. I can recall that that road that went to our school, after it left Highway 10 and it went north there about another half mile or so, it was so bad with drifts, they had the Caterpillar in there with a snowplow on it, and it got stuck, and you had to come in from the other end, and then when they got up close to it, they hooked chains on and pulled it through. So it was just not like we have, the roads were not built up like they are now, so it made it a lot worse. Our school day was, we would start the school day with the Pledge of Allegiance every day. And you know, I can still remember it real well yet, but that was something that we always did. We had all 8 grades in the same room, and the school, the total school, it would be a little bigger than what you have here, but not a whole lot. And we'd have all those kids in there and teaching the 8 grades. And it was kind of a distraction sometimes, but on the other hand, it was kind of good because you could, as a younger kid, you could actually pay attention to the older ones when they were in class, and you really got a lot of education out of that really wasn't intended that way, but that's the way it worked. Now we had, for classes, we had reading, we had writing, we had arithmetic, spelling, and penmanship. That was where you practiced your letters, and we used to do that, you know, really a lot. We didn't have what you have today. I mean, the arithmetic was it ended with we had addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. We had no algebra, no geometry, nothing like that. So it was a lot different than it is today. Some of the disadvantages, of course, in going to a school like that, the last year that I was in school there, we had only 6 children in the entire 8 grades. So you went to school and it was kind of nice because the teacher had a lot of personal time with you to teach, but it was really bad when you were going to go for breaks, when you were going to have your recesses. You couldn't even play a game of ball or anything because we only had 6 kids. And so, you know, we used to run around a lot and play tag and things like that, but that's basically all you could do. So that was a big disadvantage. The last year we had, like I said, only the 6 kids in school. And when we hit my 8th grade, that was the last year I was in that school. When that 8th grade was over with, our school, that was the last year for that school, it closed. We joined the Prescott School District, and the kids have been bussed into town here ever since. I think that it was a good experience. I can tell you, when I came to my first day at high school, was really tough because now you got 30 kids in a class, and which at that time seemed huge to me because I didn't have anybody else with me when I was in grade school. So it was really a challenge to get up in front of those kids and give, say, a book report or whatever we might have to do. But my knees used to really shake the first few times I got up in front of people. So that was one of the bad things about going to a school like that. The school closed in 1941. Yeah. Now that was 6 kids in the whole school. That was in all 8 grades, so there were only 6 kids in the whole school. So I was the only one in my grade, and there were some grades that had none. Well, I can remember, you know, we had a bunch of boys in our neighborhood, and Halloween was quite an exciting time because everybody went out and did some tricks on people. And we used to really like to do some things at the school. And I can remember taking I wouldn't want to confess to this when I was going to school, but I can remember taking the merry-go-round off of this whatever stand it was on, and then we took it over and put it in front of the door to go into school. And of course the next day when we got to school, we couldn't get in right away, so it kind of gave us a little reprieve from going to class right away. But you know, no, not really. It wasn't really, you know, with that many kids, you couldn't really remember a lot of great things that you had a chance to do. We just didn't do it. In wintertime, we would play, you'd go out and make tracks around in the snow, and then like a pie shape, cut tracks across, and then you play tag, you'd have to stay on the tracks. Things like that, real simple stuff.
My name's Don Eggers, and I grew up in the Clifton area. I went to school at what is on the map there as Bailey School, and that has been moved and then torn down. I was the only kid in my grade. I went 8 years, and I was always the only kid. I was the top dog, and I was also the biggest dummy in the class. But I finished 8 years there at Bailey School. Now, going to school there, it was just a one-room schoolhouse. That's all there was. And the heating in there was a big round oak stove, about so big around. It was the teacher's job every morning, and it was cold weather, to start up that fire and get it going. And that's the only heat there was in the building. We had Our hot lunches were provided by a boiler that was put on top of that stove. They would heat up water, and you would bring cocoa or hot dish or whatever you wanted from school. All the time that I was at the Bailey School, that school never had any electricity. The High Line came right by the front of it, but there was never any electricity in that building. Also, it never had any water in it. That was our job, to walk up to the neighbors up on the hill and carry water down for that. Or if that cistern was haywire, full of pollution, we'd have to walk up the road the other way, where Jeff Mose owns that now, and carry our water back. And I don't know for sure, but I heard that we kept drinking out of that until someone found a dead chicken in it. So then we had to carry our water up the other way. And that's all the water we had. And it's hard to believe, but I think we had a common cup or dipper. We all drank out of the same cups and dippers. And but the same with illnesses, everything. All the time I was in grade school, I didn't miss much school. I don't know whether we were too tough for the bugs or what, but some of them had chicken pox, and they had whooping cough, and they had measles. And there's one other common ailment in those days. And we all seemed to catch them, but nobody got seriously sick off of them. We did have one girl passed away. I think she was probably about the 6th grade. She got strep throat, and she passed away. That was about the time that I graduated from school. So it was kind of tough growing up in those times. I can say we had our hot luncheon. That was something in those days. Now you can imagine a schoolroom, one room. Oh, the whole thing wasn't much bigger than this room, and but we had 17, 18, 20 students in that one room, and it was very interesting because, like I say, hot lunchtime, you had to bring your lunch, and in those days peanut butter was a common thing. Our peanut butter was always bought in tin cans about the size of an ice cream pail now. That's how the peanut butter. And I think we ate more peanut butter sandwiches than anybody can think about. But it was, we got by it.
My name is John Rowe. A one-room school. The name was Pierce Valley. It was just like 1.5 miles from our home. And one of my favorite things was walking to school, and the nice days when we'd go along and pick up all the neighbor kids, and it turned into kind of a party. We loved going to school because it was a family deal. You know, we had all my older brothers and sisters, younger brothers and sisters, and plus all the neighbor kids. And it was just like, when you got to school, you weren't segregated into someone to this grade and that grade. We were all in the same room, so you had to try and get smart because your older brothers and sisters were sitting behind you when you were in class. So it averaged like around 20. So there was only like 2 or 3 in a class. Classes was very small, and the one thing about this one room thing is when there was just about always a class going on, and you could pick up, when you're in the first grade, you're already hearing what the second grade is talking about, but you are learning it, whether you know it or not. And after you go beyond them grades, you're hearing it again. We always go out and said the Pledge of Allegiance as one of the kids cranked up the flag. It was just every morning we did that unless we couldn't. I mean, because of rain or whatever, but we did it inside then. We had a flag on the front of the school, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance before class started. And I always remember that. I remember being knocked out on the swing one time, and me and Roger Fiedler were racing it was always a challenge to see who could get so your body and chain was straight out from all I remember, one of my favorite memories was in, I think, a 5th or 6th grade, I got to play Santa Claus in our Christmas play. And it's not a big deal, but to a kid, it can be. It was really fun, you know. And then they really had a Christmas party when they did the play, you know. Then, of course, the Santa Claus always had to distribute all the gifts. Everybody got a gift in the school, the parents and everybody, so it was a big, kind of a really fun thing for a little kid, you know. But when we got a report card, they had, all the mothers came in for lunch. And so it was another good time because they all brought bars and cookies, and so, and then after lunch, we could just go and play because the teachers and the mothers were talking about us. So, and I remember every report card, we got weighed and measured and our eyes tested. So that was always on the back of the report card. You could see exactly from one quarter to the other how much she had grown. And Arbor Day was always great. We always had Arbor Day, and we raked and cleaned the whole yard and get it all in a big pile, and then we'd roast hot dogs and marshmallows, and the rest of the day we just played softball, so it was, or whatever we wanted to play. So that was a good memory too. Yeah, the days were really easy because there was no bus. You didn't have to ride a bus for an hour or anything. You just kind of goofed off and got down there, and then, so they were pretty easy days, I thought, compared to after I got out of there. The school was 1 through 8, and they closed it in '53, I think, and I was in the 7th grade.
When the pupils arrived, and she was her own janitor. While the room was heating up, she could do blackboard work for the day, or some other activity where she could move around until it became comfortable for sitting. The bell was then rung at 9 o'clock. Attendance was taken, followed by everyone reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Music was very often taught first thing in the day, as it seemed to get everyone energized. Some schools had a piano, which made it much easier, and the Golden Book of Songs and the Churchill Grindle books were the popular ones used for this. And if the child had a favorite song, and we didn't have the music for it, we'd try to find it so we could all learn it. After the children were all seated, the study day began. Classes would be called up in front to recite their lessons, read aloud, or be given their assignments for the following day. Each class had approximately 15 minutes. They would then return to their seats to study, and the next class would be called. Penmanship was highly stressed, as was spelling. The alphabet in cursive writing often appeared around the room above the blackboards. Correct posture aided in better writing. The other two subjects with spelling and writing, which were considered that were very important, were reading and arithmetic. A lot of arithmetic was done at the blackboards, as not only did this save paper, but it was easier to erase and correct your mistakes. Fellow students could help you find your errors too, and that helped everyone learn. Math was done solely with the mind, no calculators. By knowing your multiplication tables and flashcards, and those were very good aids in keeping the mind sharp. A game was used often where the teacher would hold up a card, and the pupil that called the correct answer out first got the card. The one with the most cards at the end was the winner. Spelling bees were done much the same way. Spelling errors and all the classwork completed was always checked, and the child would be asked to correct them and hand them back in, so they would learn the correct spelling. The subjects taught were the social studies group, which included civics, geography, and history. In the English group, which included language, reading, spelling, and writing. The science group, which was agriculture, science, and hygiene, and the fine arts group of music and art. The popular Dick and Jane series of books were used in reading, as well as a little paper called the Weekly Reader. And the students could read extra books, and they were given a reading circle certificate if they read a certain amount, and they could add seals to that by reading more. And they also got certificates for excellence in writing if they had extra good penmanship. Creativity was important in artwork, not only in drawing and painting, but by making things with materials that they a lot of times would bring from home or find in nature. Some of the things were beads, pine cones, acorns, walnut shells, seashells, buttons, spaghetti, wood and soap carving, weaving, or embroidery work. Country students gained a lot of knowledge from hearing other classes recite, and many times could spell the words the older classes had, as their words were written on the blackboard. Older students also acted as mentors for some of the younger ones who needed help. Report cards were sent home each month to be signed by the parents and returned. After the student completed the 7th grade, they were tested before they were advanced to the 8th grade. Upon completion of their 8th grade, they were required to pass a county-wide standard exam at the county seat before receiving their 8th grade diploma, entitling them to any high school. The rural teacher was extremely busy because not only did she have to prepare work for all 8 grades, but she was the janitor, housekeeper, overseer on the playground, and had to make sure that children were properly dressed when going out at recess or home at night. The children had 2 15-minute recesses, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and 1 hour off at noon. The teacher also had to make sure she always had her lesson plan book up to date, several weeks in advance, because she never knew when the supervisor would come walking in. She also had to have hot lunches for those who brought them. The teacher was required to have a Christmas program, and sometimes she'd have a Halloween program also. Recreation in the form of ball games were enjoyed by everyone, and usually played during the noon hour. Everyone wanted the teacher on their side. Other outdoor games that were played were hide and seek, pom-pom pull-away, drop the handkerchief, fox and geese, red rover, and anti-eye over. And indoor games were hide the thimble, musical chairs, and I spy. The children liked the duties that they could help with also, so that make them feel important and like they were part of everything. Some of the things they liked the best were washing the blackboards, clapping the erasers, sweeping the floor, taking down the flag or putting it up, bringing in fuel, wood, which was wood for the stove. The schoolyard was expected to be raked by the teacher and the students and was usually done on Arbor Day. Then it would be followed with a marshmallow roast and wiener roast. There were many happy times at the country school, and most of the parents cooperated very well with the teacher. A school picnic was held at the end of the year for everyone. Great, wide, beautiful, wonderful world, with the wonderful water around you curled, and the wonderful grass upon your breast. World, you are beautifully dressed. The wonderful air is over me, and the wonderful wind is shaking the tree. It walks on the water and whirls the mills and talks to itself on the tops of the hills. You friendly earth, how far do you go with your wheat fields that nod and your rivers that flow? With cities and gardens and cliffs and isles and people upon you for thousands of miles. You are so great and I am so small. I tremble to think of you, world, at all. And yet when I said my prayers today, a whisper inside me seemed to say, you are more than the earth, though you're such a dot. You can love and think, and the earth cannot. And then I always liked trees, and I remember this little one that poem was written by William Sands that I just recited. But this poem by Joyce Kilmer I liked about the tree. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow is lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. I remember you showing me pictures of the trees and things that you had taken, and I just think a tree is the most beautiful thing. So some of those little things that you memorize, they stick with you forever. says how fondly I remember the little one-room school where I attended as a child. I learned the golden rule. My father was a farmer, and so this was the place we went to learn to read and write and run hard to first base. I know the building lacked a lot compared to schools today, but this small country schoolhouse served us well anyway. And so the lower grade kids heard stuff up through grade 8, and they learned things beyond their grades, which in itself is great.